Hey everyone, just coming to you with this public service announcement. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First and foremost, it's free to do so. You don't got to come out of your pocket. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of others platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's why I got on it. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right. Peace.
Peace. Peace. This is Masterminds with Brother Shem L. I'm your host, Brother Shem L, and this is Spotify Live. The room is Metaphysics and Moor. And in one moment, I will get my co-host on, Brother Leos Bay, and we will start the build. Peace, Brother Leos, you on?
Islam, Momo.
Islam. So, just glad you can get on. So we can kind of jump right into the build. Did you want to go into those keys we discussed before? Was there something else you wanted to kind of jump into first?
Oh yeah, we can jump into the keys if you want to. If you just want to go over the keys real quick, as to what they are. I had them written down. I know what which ones they are, not by number, but by question and answer. But
yeah, definitely. So we're dealing with key 66 and 67. How many selves are there? 2. Name them: higher self and lower self. So those are the basic 2 keys that we're dealing with right now. So basically, in essence, I wanted to first kind of get your take on it in reference to that, and we can kind of expand on there.
Islam, or from my portion of understanding at this point in time, it's how many selves are there? 2, and we named them, higher self and lower self. From my understanding and my studies, the higher self is Allah and man, and the lower self is, I guess you could say, the devil and man. And I get that from, the questionnaire, and also when Jesus goes into the wilderness, he goes inside of himself. And other parts, as far as if they say if you want to dethrone a demon self, so there's just different things to add on when it comes to those keys. From my portion of understanding, though, the lower self breeds hatred, lewdness, murder, thefts, and everything that harms, and the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life. Well, I know that's what it breeds. And when I think about it, it also reminds me of the key coming out of Circle 7, a few keys actually. It says, the same, and I'm paraphrasing here, so I might not be saying it verbatimly, but for those who study well, that they're gonna know where I'm coming from. It says the same sun that softens the clay is the same sun that hardens the wax, or it might be vice versa. But it says it is the same soul that willeth contraries. Contrary is something that goes against each other. And if you think about it, there's 2 voices inside of your head, and one's telling you to do good and the other one's telling you to do bad. So I look at that as the higher self and lower self, and the voice is telling me to do good. I know that that's Allah and man, and I know that the lower self breeds lewdness, murders, thefts, and everything that harms. So when I hear that voice, I know which self I'm dealing with. And I feel like us as spiritual beings, I feel like us as the force listening to the soul do its thinking. And I guess you could say, to me, I guess it's seeking liberation through the actions. God says action is the light; it will not be held from it. So, that's what I think about when I hear them voices. And sometimes before I make a decision, and sometimes I don't always make the best decision. Sometimes I'm in my lower self, but at the end of the day, I feel like there should be a balance created there. And sometimes, and speaking for self, we use the lower self as an excuse, or the fact that it's a circle of life, or that balance, that there needs to be balance. In circle 7, it says he armed us with resolution. He gave us the means to throw that off of us, to get us off of that. And it also says, right, as far as happiness is concerned and things of that nature, that only our own choice can give them to us entirely. But if we don't have knowledge of self and know that we have two selves and know that those voices speaking are two different voices, then, it's kind of hard to identify which is the higher self and lower self, especially if we haven't been taught those things, or we don't pay enough attention to ourselves. We just kind of get wrapped up in those thoughts, whether they're good and bad, and we go with the flow, kind of like, I guess that's what they say to me, like lost souls, But yeah, that's just my measure of understanding at this time.
Right.
That's just my
Islam, definitely. I appreciate that. And when you spoke about the aspect of lost soul, I was thinking about, you brought to my mind your song Trap Soul. I was just playing that as well. But in reference to the aspect of the higher self and lower self, of course, in our lessons, and I just want to, read from Circle 7 so we kind of get some context for the people who are listening and who will be listening. I'm going to chapter 3, and I'll just read a few verses first, and then we'll probably keep going back to this chapter, because it pretty much, this entire chapter 3, Elihu Lessons, the Unity of Life, pretty much expounds on simply the higher self and the lower self in its entirety. And there's other chapters as well. But starting from verse 5, it says there are two selves, the higher self and lower self. The higher self is human spirit clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. And you made a very important point in terms of being able to distinguish, first realizing that you have two selves. We had the discussion, our last discussion in the room, we went into the aspect of what is it to actually be yourself. Speaking about how did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans by teaching them to be themselves, and to realize that there are actually two selves. There's a higher self and there's a lower self. Which brings us to the part in chapter 3, where Elihu was actually saying, verse 14, if you were to ask me what to study, I would say yourselves, and you well have studied them, and then would ask me what to study next, I would reply yourselves. And I always make a note that he doesn't say study yourself. He says study yourselves, which implies the study of the higher self and the lower self. We have to study both. And it goes into why you need to know the lower self and the higher self. Knowing the lower self is that illusion. In other words, when we get a lot of things that we deal with pertaining to our carnal self, we get caught up in emotions, things we want, whether it's material, whether it's, lust, whatever it may be. These desires, they have a beginning and an end, and they are all really connected with this plane of manifest. They're all really connected with the physical body. But when you know the higher self, you know well the things that cannot pass away. So you know that which is everlasting. What is truth? Truth is all. What is all is Allah. Can truth change? Truth cannot change or pass away. So to know that is to know the real essence of really who you are. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times people will, to your point, what you made, people will kind of excuse bad behavior sometimes as, well, I'm just being me. This is just who I am. And in reality, if you really probe into that, that's not really the case. In other words, that's how you behave. That's part of the persona. The persona literally means mask. That's what you put on, but that's not you in essence. So a lot of it, you find out, people have experiences, people go through trauma, people, that turn product of your environment, you know what I mean? And all these different things make up the personality, but the personality is not the self. You know what I mean? It's that part of you that's connected with the carnal self that expresses itself the way it expresses. You know what I'm saying? That part can breed hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harm. The higher self, the true self, it can't do that. It doesn't operate in that context. You know what I'm saying? And so what you made a very important point in reference to knowing that there is a difference and to be able to distinguish between the two. So I thought that was very, very poignant that you put that together. So I guess with that, we can ask the question in your, from your level of study where you at now, how do you best make the determination in your life, in your day-to-day life, of what's coming from your higher self and what's coming from your lower self?
Well, like I said, you gotta know what each self breeds. And once you know what each self breeds, then you'll be able to identify which is the higher self and which is the lower self. And sometimes we don't always choose the right self, but like you said, the lower self is the illusions of the world, and they'll pass away. And it just reference another key. What title does? I believe it says Satan give to himself, and it's God. You know what I mean? So sometimes we thinking that we're doing right, or that we're making the right decision, and sometimes we're not making the right decision. But that's that falsehood, or that truth reverse. It appears to be that which is right, but it's not. Kind of like the color of law, right? So where I'm at in my studies, that's how I identify it. And sometimes even though I identify it and I know better, I still choose wrong. You know what I mean? And that's gratifying the lower self, and that's what debases us from Allah. And when I still choose wrong, I try to make speedy reparations, to the best of my ability. And when I choose wrong, I have a period of reflection, because that's the business of man. And as I go through my periods of reflection, I tell myself, like, Mo, that's not right. Like, don't think that, the punishment of Allah, like, just because it's been, like, you can say that it's been delayed or whatever, but time never was when man was not. So the same way that life leaves your body is the same way that it'll return to you. And, with that being said, during my periods of reflection, like, I know, or if something ends up going wrong later on down the line, I know what it came from. And I know that, that the doubts are of my own doing, and anything wrong is of me, because the soul remains perfect even in the bosom of a fool. and it's the image of He who created me. And just to elaborate even further, or to add on to what you were saying, Brother Hopkins Bay, he's got some good material as far as getting to know self, all the way down like to the anatomy, like the spirit, the soul, and to the body, and the tissues, the organs, the cells, the DNA, and he gives you a structured breakdown of how all of that works. And then speaking about trauma, I have a friend of mine. Me and her spoke the other day, and she's learning about self, and she explained the science of PTSD to me, and I was like, wow, that's amazing, because she explained to me how the brain will, or if a child experiences trauma, there's different types of trauma, but if a child experiences a certain type of trauma at a certain age, and she was basically explaining like the brain knows that that body is undeveloped, so it'll the brain will protect the child, from, I guess, having to deal with mass amounts of negative energy that it doesn't know, because it's a child. They don't know how to process it at that time. So what I was, from my portion of understanding that she was giving me, is that the brain stores some of this energy, and it, like, I guess it compartmentalize or something like that, like where you put it in, different compartments of the brain, or different regions of the brain, or conscious, and so as the child grows, she was saying, that energy seeks liberation, but if the child doesn't have knowledge of self, like, higher self, lower self, then majority of the time that liberation of energy comes through negative means, like, and that's where people get the lashing out and things of that nature. So, and I got to telling her about the Hopkins Bay demonstration, as far as like, I was like, well, it's millions and billions of years of information in our DNA. So you got to understand, the trauma that you took on as a child and the trauma that your ancestors took on is passed down to you. It's in the DNA. And so when we get to know self, our higher self and lower self, and like you said, he who knows his lower self knows well the illusions of the world, and knows that they'll pass away, and knows that the higher self is truth, So I was explaining to her, I said, we are the God childs. We are the childs, the Jesus childs, or we are justice, And I say that because we're the ones that Allah has chosen to give these give the mysteries of heaven, I guess you could call, you could say, we're the ones that he chose to give these keys to, and give the understanding of these keys to, so that way we can change, the cellular structure and everything that was passed on down, that was passed down to us, even through our ancestors, so we can break these cycles and usher in, I guess, what they would say, that, how they say in the New Testament, the New Jerusalem, so called, or we could say the Mecca. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, that's just where I stand right now, and I hope I ain't veer off of the topic, but
No, but absolutely, it's on. That you made a lot of good points. What I wanted to camel back on what you were saying in reference. Well, first, I want to give context to the question, and I'll answer it from my measure of understanding, and then kind of elaborate on something you spoke on. One of the things that we find in the Circle 7 on Chapter 7 is where we're dealing with the meaning of truth. It says on verse 13, it says, man is the breath made flesh. So truth and falsehood are conjoined in him. And then they strive and naught goes down, and man as truth abides. Later down in verse 19, it says, again, Lamas asks of understanding, what have you to say? And Jesus said, it is the rock on which man builds himself. It is the gnosis of the art and of the naught of falsehood and of truth. It is the knowledge of the lower self, the sensing of the powers of man himself. So with that being stated, you have to have a level of understanding. You have to come to understanding, a comprehension of yourself. That's why study of self. So that rock, that foundation on which you building yourself, allows you to actually know, be able to separate that of you which always was, is, and evermore will be, to that which is like I said, is part of the illusion. In other words, it's finite. And to give you the example, and I'm going to go and touch on what you're talking about, but one of the things I do is I go and he trains me. One of the things he speaks about is you have to get to the point of not thinking. And at first I didn't grasp what he was saying. And then he went on to speak about basically when you do movements in martial arts, whether it's Qigong or what have you, you're operating off of a cellular memory. You're developing cellular memory. And we went through some movements, and he gave me the example of how at first I wasn't doing it right. He said, that's because you thought. You froze. You was thinking. He said, now don't think. Basically, like Bruce Lee said, empty your mind. So what happens is, and this is going to tie into what you're saying about the DNA and everything, and it's actually in our Moorish Holy Quran when it speaks about it, something that I studied earlier. But when you, how can I put it? If you go through a motion, right? They say what's called build muscle memory or anything like that. What happens is you operating off of the dictates of the soul. You know what I mean? So it's basically you allowing basically your inner self to control the outer self. And so the very connection, that's why some people will say the spirit and soul. I've heard some people say the spirit and soul is your DNA and your RNA. But more so, the soul and the spirit operates within or through your
Islam, Mo. I think we lost. Oh, you on mute right now, Mo.
I I I muted.
Islam, Mo. Yeah, you was
Can you
muted
hear
for
me?
like a good, like. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Islam, Mo. Yeah, you was muted for like a good 2 or 3 minutes. I said he probably over there going in. I said, but yeah, I tried to
Oh,
send you a
Mo,
message.
you got to hit me up earlier, Mo. You got to let me know. Where did I stop?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you heard me or not. I said, Mo, you on mute like 2 or 3 times. Then I sent a message. I said on mute.
Didn't hear you.
Yeah. All is well. Everything happens for a reason. But yeah, you stopped at the DNA. You said the RDN. I think you said something about. I don't know exactly how you said it, but something about the RDNA and the other DNA being the soul.
The RNA and DNA.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, there are some who say that the RNA and the DNA are the soul. I would say, from my measure of understanding, that the soul operates through the RNA, the spirit and soul operates through the RNA and DNA, more so. And then what I was saying is that in chapter 1, in the creation and fall of man, it speaks about Man is the Lord of all the plane, of manifest, of protoplasm, of mineral, of plant, of beast, etc. And the thing that I focused on, I studied up on was protoplasm, because protoplasm is just not a word we use often, but protoplasm is related to protoplasm. And the protoplasm is that part of the cell, within the cell, that contains mostly water. So what I was saying is that water holds memory. Like there are tests that have been done where you can speak certain words to water and it will crystallize a certain way. It feeds off of the vibrations of love or hate. And that's why I'd had a whole section in my book, What is the Higher Self, on water. Because water symbolizes the personification of man. Just as in chapter 1 of our Most Holy Quran, you are man, there's a plane of spirit, soul, and plane of manifest. Man is a spirit that took on a body of soul, that took on a body of flesh. Likewise, that would be likened to gas, liquid, and solid.
Islam or cut again.
Islam, are you still there?
Islam, yeah. I try to reach out to you again. Yeah.
Man, I'm blanking out like that.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, Mo over there gave him the whole demonstration.
Oh man, When I stop at, I'm gonna go in bits and pieces now. So, go. Tell me where I stopped at, if you remember.
Yeah, you stopped at the water, how the cells have water and water has memory, and you spoke on how water can take the three different.
So water has memory. It could take three different forms, just like man. And I'm just going to summarize it like this. Basically, in essence, like it says, what is the higher self? Higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. So to wrap it up, anything that is in harmony, you know what I'm saying, is pretty much of the higher self. Disharmony is of the lower self. So that was the final point that I really wanted to drive home, and I think was most important. I think you got the gist of I was able to get out the gist of everything else. Islam.
Islam. Yeah, I got you. Did you want to continue on from there, or?
Yeah. I know. I drop off a lot, so I want to be able to kind of kind of get some maybe either some final thoughts, or if you want to try to, if there was something else within line with what we were speaking on that you want to kind of expound on or build on.
Yeah. I get what you're saying as far as the water and retaining the memory and taking form and stuff like that, and that brings the mind. When they say the word was God and it was with God and the word became flesh, and we say that man's ideal is his God, and as man unfolds, his God unfolds. So that just if we think about knowledge of self or studying self, getting to know self, that's like I told a friend the other day. I said there's so many different parts of knowing yourself or selves, right? So I say, you can study the brain, you can study the body, you can study, the spirit. Like there's just different parts of knowledge itself. There's a lot to be learned, but something that comes to mind for me is how most of our body is made up of water, even all the way down to the organs. So, and if we keep our bodies clean with water, um, pardon self, if we keep our bodies clean with water, and then we pay attention to the thoughts that we hold, then that just lets me know, it's gonna take form in one way or the other, because you're gonna seek expression through the physical. And I don't know if you listen to Bob Proctor much, but Bob Proctor, he, they and like I think it's Napoleon Hill, they they use a lot of more science, but they might give it another name. Um, but they say, what you impress on the mental, you express in the physical. So yeah, that's what comes to mind when I think about the water and stuff like that, and the word. And going back to the higher self and lower self, which we really not going back to, we've been on it the whole time. But something that comes to mind to me is like we was speaking about PTSD, and how this energy gets stored in different parts or different regions of the brain, and how it seeks expression. But how does someone as a child, you see what I'm saying, who was growing up and trying to, learn how to deal with things? Because not all children who experience trauma or have PTSD end up seeking negative outlets. Some of them choose positive outlets. So
Mm-hmm.
my question or my curiosity is along the lines of, like, if they're not aware of self, how can that child, or at what point does that child say, this isn't me, let me do something else? Because they understand, hey, that's not me, that's the lower self. But some people, they don't understand it. And what I mean by that is, like, something that comes to mind for me is when the prophet said, I forgive you for everything you done before I came. So that brings to mind to me, and we can even tie that into what I spoke about earlier, when I know better, but I still choose the wrong decision. So, but going back to the children and everything like that. So for us that know, like, we know better. So we're more responsible. Like, but for them, if whatever they done, like he said, I forgive you for what you've done before I came. So my question I'm trying to draw is, like, how do we deal with those children, as a society? I know as a Moorish society, I know, they'll be raised up. But how do those who don't have that opportunity to come into the knowledge, how or like, how do we place responsibility on them, or how do we raise them up, or what I'm saying, things of that nature, as far as the higher self and lower self is concerned? Because they, like I said, if they're not aware, then they can't change it. If they're not aware of it and they don't take action, then they can't change that cellular structure. And like you said, a lot of that water in the cells is memory. So
Islam. Yeah, that's a great question. And to answer that, it's kind of within your question. You brought up awareness. They have to be made aware. Um, and more, please interrupt me and just say something if I drop off, because I know how this phone is. But they have to be made aware. They have to be made conscious. Because you can't do what you don't know about, if that makes sense. You can't operate in a context if you're not aware that that's a possibility to operate. It's almost like, I'll give you the example of drawing back to our circle 7, where Jesus is speaking about happiness. That's chapter 12. And so in there, he asked the question, why you also said, have you no happiness in life? And then the man replied, we scarcely know the meaning of the word. We toil to live and hope for nothing else but toil, and bless the day when we can cease our toil and lay down and rest in Buddha's city of the dead. Right? And so he basically explained to him later on that your thoughts are wrong, you know, and that heaven is not a place of meets and bounds, but it's a state of mind. So at that point, he's making them aware of something they were not aware of. You catch what I'm saying? So that's the first step, you know. So for when you deal with youth, and I guess we all have had some sort of trauma in our life to some degree. So whenever I went through drama or something in my childhood, in the context of the environment I lived in, things I've witnessed, I went into a state of questioning. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that has to be within everybody, the ability to question something and seeing if there's something better. Because some people, you know, children and adults, they'll be in a traumatic state. You know what I'm saying? To be quite honest, any state outside of the state of the higher. So that being said, there has to be some sort of desire in the person to want to escape that. You know what I mean? Some people are content. You know what I mean? Like you may have a person, you know, I have family members, they're institutionalized. You know, they've been in and out of prison since they were young. You know what I'm saying? And now they grown men. You know what I'm saying? And so they don't think outside of that there's a life outside of that, or that it's possible for them. They may even see other people succeed and, you know what I'm saying, escape that lifestyle. But for them, oh, this is who they are. That gets back to what I was saying before about some people will excuse their behavior as a saying, this is who I am. This is just me. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm from LA. I'm from New York. I'm from, you know, I'm a this, I'm a that, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to be whatever they claim as the identity to them, which is really an illusion because it's something they acquired. It's not something they were born as. Whether it's they're part of a gang, whether they're from a certain section of the country, you know, what have you. So I wanted to say that. Can you hear me, Mo?
Islam, I'm listening.
Islam, praise Allah. So I just want to kind of say that in the context of basically there has to be, one, you have to make a person aware, and then two, the person who's made aware, who is conscious and aware of these options, there has to be a desire within them to choose. And that's where the will comes in, whether it's a strong will or a sluggish will. Islam.
I agree with you. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And something that comes to mind when you speak on, you know, that person has to become aware of it within themselves. Like what, even if nothing was spoken, you know, through language, like I feel like, you know, people know right and wrong. It's just something, you know, I feel like we're born with that. Like we know right and wrong. So like you said, they just gotta want better for themselves as a youth. Like, and I know me through my experiences, I always wanted better. And it was just like you said, it's that understanding that allows us to, you know, see things clearly for what they really are and not for what they appear to be. But yeah, it's just, you know, yeah, like I said, it makes a lot of sense, and I feel like maybe, you know, the good it's already written in it's already written in us, you know, when we come to Earth and things of that nature. So yeah, I agree with you on that. And other than that, higher self, lower self, Some people say, it's that is one. Have you ever heard of that?
Say that one more time.
Have you
It's
ever
what?
heard anybody say like the higher self and lower self? They try to, they say like at the end of the day, it's like one whole.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I kind of agree with it in a sense, and then I kind of don't, because I've heard some demonstrations on the literature as far as like, they say pay attention to the way that things are written, and they say the higher self and lower self, and they mentioned somewhere, how they say man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. I believe they said it's like a conjunction or something after, like, or before and, or truth and falsehood strangely mixed. So from my portion of understanding that somebody was giving me through a demonstration, they were saying like, um that the conjunction means that the falsehood was added on, because we've always been. So um I don't really know how to elaborate too much on that, other than saying it, as far as them being one, maybe like the lower self is used to, I guess, to work out our life lessons and things like that, if we go back to chapter 1. So with that, yeah, I say peace, Mo.
Islam. Peace. Yeah, you're right. They are conjoined. They're joined together in man. So, and that's actually in our that's in the Circle 7. That's in the Moorish Holy Quran, that they're conjoined in man. That's what I was getting at, where it speaks about in chapter 7, where it says, and I'll just read it again and then kind of really just go in it. Man is breath made flesh, so truth and falsehood are conjoined in him, and then they strive, naught goes down, and man as truth abides. So, all right, so let's look at it from this. We know naught is the illusion, okay? Naught is falsehood. It says falsehood is naught, and yet it is the manifest of right. Whatever has been made will be unmade. That which begins must end. And all things that can be seen by human eyes are manifest of aught or naught, and so must pass away. So within us, being breath made flesh, we have this physical body, right? This body of desires that exist. This strangely, strange man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. And then you have you as a spirit, right? The higher self is human spirit clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. So you have these. This is the multi-dimensional aspect of you, but the true you is spirit. And so your physical body goes down, but not only in a sense of dying, physical death, but also it goes down. The illusion goes down in terms of when they strive. You're supposed to lose the attachment to the physical body. It's like, again, I'm going to give the example of the martial arts. I was learning a move in which I had to basically take. I had to be able to take. If I was being grabbed, I had to be able to take you down without using muscle. Okay. Now, if you grab somebody, usually you're gonna tighten up, things of that nature. But my teacher told me, when you do this, and he did it on me. He said, you got to remember, I don't exist. You catch what I'm saying? And what I got from that is that you have to be so in tune with your inner self that nothing else exists. And when you can tap into that, that's your higher self. Naught goes down. Everything else is the illusion. So I say that to say that at some point in time, you become your higher self, which you really always were. You know what I mean? You incarnated into this body, spirit into a soul, into a body. right? To go through these things as mentioned in chapter 1 for you to get to the point that you always were a spirit. That's who you really are. It's like we come in with and get amnesia. You know what I mean? It's like give the example of how can I want to give an example of a movie. It's almost like Coming to America. You know what I mean? Coming to America where Eddie Murphy, he leaves the kingdom to go to Queens, New York. You know what I'm saying? To go through all of that just to go back to be his true self. You know what I'm saying? But he went through all this and worked at McDowell's and all that stuff. But just just to come to the point where he was never that to begin with. You know what I mean? Always returning home. You know what I mean? Being your true self. So I just want to say that. Peace.
Islam, Mo. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely believe, not just believe, but I have faith in I guess you could say fruition. You know, I
Yes, sir.
and the only way you come to really know that is through the practice. You know, it's through
Right.
practicing whatever science that you're into, whether whether there are more or any other organization that deals with the light. Um, yeah, we always was that, and that's something that I always tell myself, and that's what the keys help me with. And like I said, that's how I identify my higher self and lower self, is knowing what they breed, and remembering that one is it's a falsehood, it's an illusion, and it carries a low vibration. And Jesus speaks about the transmutation of the flesh, and he says, at the speed of light. Or and to me that's thought, because thought is the cause of it all. So higher self, lower self, um I believe that's a good, I believe we off on a good start, because we started out with what was the purpose of more science, Temple of America, and how did they begin and how did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans. And that brings me back to the point we made earlier, speaking on trauma, and how my friend spoke about PTSD and how it gets stored and everything like that. And she mentioned something along the lines that it comes from, I can't remember verbatimly how she said it, but she said a lack of identity. And I said, I told her, I said, let me add on from there. I said, it's crazy you said it comes from, like, looking for that identity, because what we teach is, that nationality is the order of the day, and nationality gives you that sense of identity, instead of you searching, what I mean, for something and you don't know what it is. That's, to me, nationality is the order of the day. It gives us a sense of identity of who we are or who we was, and the line of genealogy through which we came, and it explains a lot of why we do what we do. And like I said, that kind of helps us along the way. And I guess it kind of help give you those positive I call them outlets. Positive outlets because whether or not, energy is energy. It has no beginning nor end,
Right.
and it's only transferable. So even if somebody is an antagonist, and I feel my energy, and I know that, hey, look, this it basically, I don't feel, I feel like it depends on the choice of the individual, how they channel that energy. So I don't feel like the energy itself is good or bad. I just feel like it's an energy, and we got to channel that energy through positive means or negative means. Again, the higher self and lower self, and that identity crisis kind of. If we're dealing with the crisis, then that kind of helps keep us in our lower self. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Islam. Absolutely, brother. Yeah, you're right on point with that. Yeah, so these are the lessons that allow us to become one with our higher self. And that's what it's all about. So definitely honest to you, Mo, for adding on and for this build. I know a couple of people came in and came out, but basically, we're gonna go to a close, and we will definitely continue on. We'll keep this going. Either, like I said, either on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And so for everybody out there who will be listening, until next time, peace and love.